We had bought several small amounts of small placer gold, much like the placer that surrounded in the video the large Icebox Nugget, and got to have a good rapport with Charlie and Byron, mostly Charlie. He was usually the one came in with the gold. And one day he came in on a hot July day, and he had a little box with him, and just dirty from head to toe. And I was with another customer at the counter, and
it was one of those little boxes that a crystal figurine comes in, you know,
right,
like one of the
blue
$8,
box. Yeah. And Charlie came in with Byron, and he said, "Chris, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Well, Charlie, I'm with a customer right now. Can you wait just a couple of minutes?" And he was just pacing back and forth, and he held up this box and he just flashed it. Boom, boom, like that. And of course, you know, it didn't take long for me to put two and two together that he had found that nugget up in the Black Hills, and I thought, my gosh. So immediately my heart was thumping, but I didn't want to be rude to my other customer, and I said, "Well, why don't you guys go wait in the office for me?" And I kind of hinted to Trevor to get in the office with him. I didn't want him to get away. But as soon as I wrapped up my deal with my customer, I went into the office, and the story unfolded then of how they had found that nugget, and it was just mind-boggling to me that a nugget of that size came into our store in the way that it did. And why don't you share how you felt about it?
Right, and just the fact that it was out of the hills. We asked if they could leave it with us for a little while. We bounced it off a few local experts that we know, and had them verify that it's plausible that there could be a nugget that size in existence. We didn't know them very well at the time, and based on the nuggets that we had seen out of the hills before, we believed the colors to be right and the quartz to be correct off of that, but we still trust but verify.
Obviously no one else had seen a nugget that size come out of the hills for decades.
Right.
And so it was just an historic moment for us, just as this is an historic moment. This is kind of a culmination, and I don't know really why I decided, or Trevor and I decided to hang on to the placer gold. I think Trevor was a little iffy about whether we should hang on to that, but I thought,
little piggy bank. Well,
yeah, it was a way of saving some gold aside, but at the same time, I thought, there's something special about this stuff, and there will be a good purpose for it somewhere down the road, having no idea this was going to take place. So.
I hope that it's a success. I hope that we raise a lot of money. That's what's going through my head right now.
Trevor handles all the money in our business, and so that's right that he should think that. And Trevor really initiated the whole idea of using the gold for a fundraiser. It was a little bit different idea in his mind. You want to share what your idea was initially?
I think that we had talked about selling it at twice of the gold price and donating the premium, and basically we would be paid for the gold value there. But then we decided just to go ahead and donate all of it for this cause.
Well, I got to thinking about it after Trevor mentioned that, and we had just gotten done with a show at the Adams Museum, which was very successful and well received. And I got to thinking, well, that Potato Creek Johnny nugget is 7 3/4 ounces. We have pretty much that much right here.
Yeah, at the time we had just over 8 ounces. Yep.
And so I thought, what if we were to cast a mold of that? And I really didn't expect Mary to be receptive to that idea at all, but her eyes kind of got big, and we started talking, and one thing led to another, and here we are. I feel very blessed to be part of this. I feel like personally I'm just a part of it. I think Charlie and Byron are the big stars, and Potato Creek Johnny is as well, because none of this would be happening if it weren't for them. But the way this has turned into an opportunity to raise some funds for two real worthy causes is it makes me feel very special to just be a part of it. I feel kind of like a spectator in a lot of ways, and I think Trevor does too. We've talked a lot about it. It doesn't. I have no sentimental attachment to the gold itself that we're melting today. because of where it's gonna what it's gonna be used for. If it were a different circumstance, maybe we would, but.
It's like a dream come true to be sitting here having the Icebox placer gold being melted and really getting started with this project. It's an exciting fundraiser for the Adams Museum and the Wounded Warrior Project, and it's just great to get going. I feel like we are in the hands of consummate professionals, and I'm not worried in the least. I think that this was really a smart move on Chris and Trevor's part to have this pre-melt done and just to verify the gold content and purity and make sure that we have the right amount going into the actual creation of Potato Creek Johnny 2. Tomorrow we're going to actually take Potato Creek Johnny's gold nugget to Hill City to have the mold made of it, and that is so exciting to me. We've been planning to do this for, I guess, we've been working on this for maybe 6-7 months now, so to actually be able to get that accomplished is exciting to me. We try to draw as little attention to what we're doing with this nugget. It has been appraised at $500,000, and so we don't tell a whole lot of people that we're transporting it.
Okay. This gold here is what Byron and I and the rest of the company have amassed over the last 18 months, 2 years, and have sold to Chris. And it's going to be going into a real interesting project here in the near future.
If you take this big nugget, and over time, when material is going over this, it's going to break off little chunks of this material here. And these little chunks that are broken off this material end up like this. And that's basically what placer is. Water, heavies in the soil, just erosion. It's just basically erosion, yeah, that takes it apart.
This is alluvial placer, which is worn off of the bathysphere, up in the more northern Black Hills. And it is washed down through stream erosion and freezing thawing, which is called exfoliation. And it all drops into the creek bed and then is fed on down to where we're picking it up. The placer that we're currently working right now, the shallow placer is over 100,000 years old. And that's the time period that the gold was deposited in there. I have certain theories that I have corroborated with geologists, and I have a pretty good idea, yes, of where it came from and how it got there. I think the most significant thing about this gold in particular is, and I'm sure Byron will agree, is the relationship that we have with Chris. How that relationship began, and the fact that he had the foresight to collect it instead of selling it off little by little as we gave it to him. And so that gave us the opportunity to do what we're doing today. We had sold to Chris, I don't know, a half an ounce, maybe an ounce of gold before we found the nugget. And our relationship, just as brief as it was enough that we could say, we don't know what to do with this. Here, you take it and help us figure it out. And I don't know, it just is very special, sentimental value to it. All of the gold in here, within 150 feet?
That's broad enough.
Well, yeah.
That's broad enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Of the actual finding of the nugget.
Right,
yes.
right.
Correct.
July 6, 2010? Yeah.
Sounds right. Somewhere out there, there's a granddaddy to this, so it's the first. It's the first find. But
Myself, that's the coolest, biggest chunk. This is the second and third. I've been doing it for 40 years. But second biggest find, because when I was 14, I found 20 ounces in 10 days. And so this is second biggest.
Basically, all of this right here is placer gold. It's just that that one's bigger than the rest of them.
What we have here is the largest undisputed Black Hills placer nugget known to exist. There have been bigger, but we don't know where they are or whatever happened to them. But this one you can actually see and touch.
How did we feel? Just, it was totally awesome. It was just totally awesome. I don't know what else to say about it.
I was digging using a big potato fork, and
There, yeah.
and the fork came down and hit it like this and knocked that piece out. That's the piece I have at home, the little piece. And normally when a rock gets stuck, remember there was no gold showing on it when we first found it. I just grab it out of the fork and throw it over my shoulder, but I felt the weight and I threw it in my bucket. And as Byron can attest, I'm blind as a bat. So when we were washing the rocks off in our grizzes to run the fines through the boxes, I started doing this thing where I would look for hematite so that my attention would be trained on the rocks in the boxes. I wouldn't throw out a nugget. Well, there I am, blind as a bat, and it's 15 degrees outside, freezing, and I see a little glimmer in there and pick it up, and there's a lot of yellow rocks in the Black Hills, and you know, it's just kind of a fuzzy yellow thing. So I walk over to Byron, and is that what I think it is, and hand it to him, and he goes, wow, like that, you can't believe it, and we start doing our little happy miner dance and pull out the cigars. We literally carry cigars for such occasions, and cracked open a thermos of coffee and just sat on the tailgate and beamed for a while. And that's
And it was the water that was cold, because July is not that cold, but
Oh, it was a cold day in July. That water was cold.
yeah, the water was cold.
We're a Rapid Precious Metals is a gold recovery and refining operation, and the initial step that we're going to do here today is melting the gold placer material that we got. We first weighed it in, and we have 10.345 ounces of placer gold. That gold is then taken and mixed with flux, which consists of borax and soda ash. The reason for doing that is to remove some of the impurities, the silica, any dirt that may be present in the placer gold. It also will take away the oxides that could form at high temperatures. We'll be melting at about 1950 degrees Fahrenheit. The gold itself is not pure gold. The placer gold will be, as an estimate, anywhere from 75 to 85% gold, and we'll determine that later with a fire assay test. And at the high temperatures, some of the impurities in there form oxides that are also removed in the flux. The flux then forms a glassy material that is broken off of a bar that would be poured. We're going to try two different ways. The next step is to actually pull a sample of the material. We'll try doing that with a vacuum tube. If there's enough gold present in the crucible, the vacuum tube will actually suck a sample up into the tube, and we can pull and clip a sample off of that for analysis. If there's not enough for the vacuum tube to work, we'll pour the gold into a bar, and then the bar will be drilled both sides, 4 to 5 different places, to get a filing sample that will then go on for fire assays. Well, first thing you'll see is the placer gold does have impurities with it, like I'm saying. So there is some silica, some oxides that are present in there. So the first thing, when we weigh the bar, the finished bar, we'll have a weight loss. In other words, there won't be a loss of gold material, but any other impurities that could be in there. And that's really one of the first steps in the refining process anyway. The other thing that we don't know what to expect right now is whether or not there's enough gold physically in there to pull a sample with the vacuum tube. We'll try that first. If we're not able to get a sample that way, we'll pour the bar and then drill the bar. Either way will give you a good accurate sample for analysis. We are working with temperatures up in the 2,000 to 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. There are times when if you're reusing crucibles, you could end up with a cracked crucible. Material could spill into the furnace, would have to be recovered from that then and reprocessed. That's basically the two major things that could happen. We do this every day, right? And we're using new crucibles, and normally you can use those crucibles 3 to 4 different times before you ever have a problem with anticipating cracks. We've tested placer gold from the Black Hills region since 1987 and have seen a range from about 72% to up to about 85% at the high end of actual gold content. Placer materials vary from region to region. Colorado, we usually see a little higher, about 80 to 85% range. Alaska, 90%, 90 to 92% gold. You have silica, you'll have a certain amount of silver. Gold is always associated with silver. You'll also have probably some copper oxides present, more than likely some iron. Some of the red staining that you see in the hills, a lot of that's from iron and iron oxides. Those would be the major impurities. Those won't impact the value of the finished product, the bar or nugget that would be made from that.
Everything went well with the melt of the placer material. The only thing that did happen is we did not have a deep enough pool of molten gold to use the sample tube and pull a molten sample. So we ended up having to pour the material into a bar that we have here. The bar weight was 10.0775 ounces. So we had a 0.2675 melt loss, which would indicate the quartz and oxide impurities that were in there. We then drilled these bars front and back and have the filing samples in a test tube to go to the School of Mines to run a fire assay test. And they'll run a gold and silver test for us on this.
The sample that we give to the School of Mines, basically, there may be some residual that will be sent back, but he'll need at least a half a gram to run the test, and that portion of that material will be lost in the testing process. The residual samples are returned to us. The weight loss was pretty standard for what we've seen with placer gold. Everything went very well, and we had a good audience.
I did a fire assay analysis for gold and silver. This is a very old technique. It's hundreds of years old. A gravimetric analysis. Basically, you remove all of the base metals and measure how much gold and silver are left. Copper, nickel, iron, zinc, lead, chromium, whatever is there. It is removed as an oxide. Just the silver and gold content. Well, total precious metals. You can determine platinum, palladium, rhodium. Found it was mostly gold, actually higher than most native gold, slightly over 90%. I've seen native gold in other areas can be as high as 92, 94%. Very low copper content for the Black Hills area. It was almost entirely gold and silver. That's why it didn't have the coppery color. This is just an alloy test. It's the full fire assay from ore. There's more to it, but this is the simple part. You take your sample and you mix it with an excess of silver, at least 2.5 times the sample weight. You roll it in lead foil, create a little packet like this. You put it in a bone ash cupel like this. This isn't used. This is made out of literally burned bone. It's calcium oxide and magnesium oxide. It melts. The base metals, copper, zinc, everything else, are changed to an oxide, and absorbed by the bone ash. It leaves a precious metals bead that looks like that. That is then flattened and dissolved. The silver is dissolved away with nitric acid. That leaves a little button like that. It doesn't look like gold, does it? But that's pure gold. It looks that color because it's a non-crystalline form. This is very soft material. It crumbles easily, very hard to weigh back. So we anneal it, heat it in a flame, and it turns into that. That looks like gold. This is the gold that was in your original sample, nothing else. So you weigh this back, that will tell you how much gold is there. Typically, to confirm that my analysis was correct, I will dissolve that in aquaresia, a mixture of nitric and hydrochloric acids, and test it for trace elements to make sure all of the lead, copper, and everything else is gone. This one I did not, because this is the button that remains from the test of the gold that you're going to use. When you heat it in the flame, anneal it, like any metal, the crystal structure condenses and it shrinks. These started at the same size. They're both pure gold. Pure gold is 24 karat. That is what we have here. That is the gold and silver in a single sample before it's flattened. We flatten it to increase the surface area, make it easier to dissolve the silver away with nitric acid.
What we did today was took the Potato Creek Johnny nugget and made a mold. We took the nugget and put it on some wax supports, which will eventually be feeds for wax and then metal. And then made a wax support around it, and then filled it up with silicone mold rubber. But seeing the actual nugget, I saw that it had enough little detailed areas. I went ahead and painted the nugget with the mold rubber. With this process, the mold itself is the rubber. It's sort of a larger version of a jewelry mold of the way they make jewelry molds is just with the rubber. It's a little bit different system, but it's a block mold or a dump mold, it's also called. But with the detail coat painted on, then the rest is just filled up, and that'll set up overnight. And once that's set up, we'll cut it out, remove the nugget. It'll go back to the secure vault, and we'll cast our wax from there and get set up with we'll figure out probably a different spruing system or feeding system for the gold cast. But then that'll all happen once the wax is made, but that's all after the mold rubber's set up.
We've already done the process where we made a wax replica of the gold nugget. Once that happens, it goes into a process called spruing. Spruing is where we attach little bars made out of wax. They act like feeds to encourage the metals to go into this. So I have already kind of pre-cut one, cleaned them up, tapered it off to create a choke to put on this. And by doing so, I'll attach a little sticky wax. You can also do your eyebrows with this. Are you going to edit this? And I attach that. Let it cool. Carefully seal it in. Once I've sprued it, I kind of look at it and try to figure out if there's any places it's going to have a problem with the feed on it. It looks pretty good to me. This is just flattening, so I can attach it to a little cup made out of wax that will actually, the gold will actually go into. I have to be as neat with that. Again, just sealing it on with a hot iron.
That marries the two pieces of wax together so they don't fall apart in the shell making process. Not quite done. I'm going to add a vent to this piece. It has an irregular shape that's super thin over here, and there's a good possibility the metal could choke off and not fill this area over here, so to be on the safe side, I'm going to attach a little round wax bar to this, to the bottom of the cup, and that also acts like a vent, so that this little puppy will feed as fast as possible with the least amount of turbulence. Actually a finished product to this point. From this stage it goes to the shell room where they dip it in sand and slurry several times to build up a ceramic coat on it. They will be dipping this in sand and slurry. Slurry is kind of like a flour and water mixture. It's just a bonder for the sand to stick to. The sand is a silica base. It's a super fine that'll pick up every single detail, including a fingerprint that's left onto this piece. They'll dip that several times in the slurry, then the sand, let it dry in betweens, and they will coat this probably maybe 5 times or more. And once that's coated and the shell is cured, dried, then they'll throw it in the kiln, melt out the wax, and it makes a hollow cast of whatever this piece was. Once they get the hollow cast, then they can heat it up again and pour gold directly into this piece. Then wait for it to cool down, chip it away, and you have your finished product, almost. Then I have to go through a few other steps of removing these gates, cleaning things back to make it look like the original piece once again. Once they ship the shell away, they cut all that stuff off. The metal chasers, there's skilled people back there that can cut this gate away using special little tools, and they can restore the texture so you'll never know where these gates were. First things first, what we're going to end up doing is removing the sides, the form that creates this mold. Then between Grant and myself, he was the gentleman that was able to mold this, so he knows exactly how it lies in there. So I'm going to let him do the cutting, and I'll assist him by separating the rubber, not scratching the piece, hopefully. Fine details are first. I'll look at the mold, examine it, see what kind of fine details in there. After seeing this already, I know there is some, so I'll preheat the mold slightly. Not enough to overheat it or melt the rubber or anything on that effect, but enough to heat up the mold so it'll accept the hottest wax as cleanly as possible and pick up all the detail. It's a microcrystalline petroleum byproduct, and it's just a refined sludge that we use in the art industry, and we can use it over and over and over. It's a solid mold, solid rubber mold, so it takes, I'm hoping we can get it to pull in about less than 30 minutes. Chasing is just the process where you remove any imperfections caused by the mold. And it's going to be perfect, so that's not going to be a problem. But there will be a seam line that will be blended in, so you'll never know where it was. It'll look just like its original state. And it is important for this to look exactly like the original.
We'll start with removing this wax form. From the photo we took, we know that the nugget itself has sort of a fat end and a skinny end, and that skinny end, it's suspended sideways, and that skinnier end is on this end with the X that I put, because as you can see, it would be real easy to know, okay, how is that sitting in there? Because without X-ray vision, we can't tell that.
The only thing that could have went wrong there, and I can tell just by reaching over and feeling it, it's great. If the mold mixture wasn't mixed properly, if the proper amount of kicker, or if the kicker went bad on us, then it'd stay gooey, then we'd have to start all over. But it looks great.
Yeah, and that's why getting a very accurate weight on the rubber is important when we use basically a jeweler's scale for that to get exactly 10% of activator per the weight of the base material of the rubber. So we keep that down within a microgram.
I'm David Wolf. I'm chairman of the board of the Adams Museum House and president of the board of Deadwood History, the new historical entity in Deadwood. It's my pleasure to serve as master of ceremonies today here at the gold pour for the Petey Creek Johnny 2 Nugget. It's an exciting day. Here we are in the Black Hills. We're kind of experiencing a new gold rush. Gold's over $1,500 an ounce. The wharf is expanding. New gold mines, perhaps on the edge of Spearfish Canyon. Prospectors in the hills looking for gold, like the gentleman from the Icebox claim. And so this gold excitement, we're taking some of that gold that's been found recently and turning it into a new historic artifact in the Black Hills, a new Petey Creek Johnny 2 Nugget. So in a way, we're making history with the current activities. It's an exciting time, and I thank you all for coming. It's my honor now to turn this podium over, if that's what it is, to Chris Johnson, owner of the Clock Shop.
And it's truly my pleasure and the pleasure of my son Trevor. He's we're partners together in business at the Clock Shop. It's our pleasure to be here and to be a part of this. It's just, I have to pinch myself once in a while because I just really feel like I'm just a bystander watching this all happen. It's just been tremendous to see the merging of so many ideas and so many creative thinkers to make this happen. And in order to give you a little history behind how this all happened, I'll have to go way back. Several years ago, we met through our store and through our operation of buying gold, Charlie Ward and Byron Janice. And they are the two gentlemen who discovered the wonderful specimen that became nationally famous a couple of years ago in July of 2010, the Icebox Nugget, which many of you got a chance to see down here. One day in July, like they said, Charlie came into the store and it was just dirty from head to toe. I was waiting on a customer, and you know, up until that time, Charlie would bring in a few grains of gold here and a few grains there, and we'd buy it from him, and we had a good friendly relationship. But Charlie said, "Chris, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Well, I'm with somebody right now." Charlie, can I wait just a minute? Charlie had this little blue box in his hand, and he opened it up for about a split second, and then shut it again. And my eyes just about fell on my head. I knew what he had found, and I knew it had been from the Black Hills. And I said, "Why don't you go sit in my office, and I'll be right in." And I wrapped up my business as quickly as I could. Went into the office, got Trevor in there, and we went about the business of hearing the story of how they found that nugget, and then finding a way that we could purchase the nugget from them. That is our business, but we have more than an interest monetarily. We have an interest from an historic perspective. We always have. Through this relationship, Charlie and Byron agreed to let us take this public and tell the story to the public. They were a little squeamish about becoming objects of attention of the media themselves and letting possibly people find out where their secret mining hole was. But you know, they've been very gracious through this process, and it's been very fun. Since that decision to go public, this did spread like wildfire. It hit over 100 newspapers, made national news, and through that, we came to be requested to let that nugget be displayed at the first Journey Museum in Rapid City, and that was a very well-attended show. But the most beautiful part of that was that the Adams Museum, and Dr. Wolf especially, agreed to work hard to get the Petey Creek Johnny Nugget out of its dark chasm in the vault up at the Adams Museum and put it on display publicly for the first time in a long time. And that went on display beside our nugget. And at that time we had a little pool of placer gold underneath it, and that grew and grew. But a few months later, they said, "Well, we'd like to do another show up in Deadwood." We did that. It was, I believe, a 3-hour show, and I think it drew over 300 people to that show. It was just tremendous to see how much interest there was in those two nuggets. And after that show, Mary and Trevor and I were sitting around with our arms crossed in the dark room thinking, what a great deal that was. And Mary touched on the fact that it's difficult these days, especially during the recession, to raise funds for the museum. And they'd love to be able to show that nugget all the time. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Trevor was the one with the first idea. He said, "Well, you know, we could auction the placer gold off and see what we could come up with." And you know, me having a talent for one-upsmanship, I couldn't resist, And I said, or better yet, we've got enough gold there that if the Adams Museum was willing, we could cast a one-time only exact specimen of the Potato Creek Johnny Nugget. And then I handed the ball off to Mary, and Mary said, we could auction it off in Deadwood sometime towards the end of next year. And my gosh, one thing led to another. Pretty soon we were with the board of the Adams Museum. They gave us their blessing, and then we handed that ball off to so many different people who are here and some who aren't, but who have played such a key role in this. There's a quote that I'd like to share with you from Napoleon Hill, great American author. And he said, whatever man can conceive and believe, he can also achieve. We wholeheartedly believe that. And we've taken that thought forward, and now we're to the point where we've reached another quote of Napoleon Hill. He said, patience, persistence, and perspiration are an unbeatable combination for success. We're here today to kick off this nugget as being a successful event to raise money for two great causes, for the Adams Museum and for the Wounded Warriors Project. There's a good reason why the Wounded Warriors Project is a part of this, and Mary will embellish on that as she speaks. But I am excited about it. We're all excited about it. We hope that after you witnessing the pouring of this nugget today, that you'll see how exciting it is to you, and you can help us to spread the word locally, regionally, and even nationally, to gather bidders together so that we can raise as much money as possible for these two great causes. We've been through the patience part. We're entering in the midstream of the persistence part, and in a few minutes, the great people from Black Hill Throngs are going to get the perspiration part because it's a hot room back there. And I just thank you all for being here. I thank you for letting me speak before you and be a part of this, and now you're a part of this as well. And with that, I would like to turn it back over to Dr. Wolf. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure now to introduce Mary Kopko. For years, Mary Kopko was the director of the Adams Museum, and then the Adams Museum House, then the Adams Museum House and Homestake Adams Research and Cultural Center. Now Mary has a new hat that she's wearing, the head of the Deadwood Historic Foundation. Without further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Kopko.
First of all, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Trevor, for having such a wonderful vision. The value of the gold and all the services that they have donated is well over $40,000 that will help us create the PCJ2, the Potato Creek Johnny 2. Well, 17 years ago, when I first started working for the Adams Museum, my board gave me the opportunity to do something no other curator had done before, to display the original Potato Creek Johnny Nugget. For 61 years, guests to the museum only saw a ceramic facsimile of the nugget. And over the years, most people believed the real nugget ceased to exist. Back in 1934, when Potato Creek Johnny sold the 7.346 troy-ounce nugget to pioneer businessman W.E. Adams, the nugget was donated to the new Deadwood Museum, named in Adams' honor. The original nugget, however, was stored in a bank vault and never saw the light of day until 1995, when hundreds of people converged on the Adams Museum to see what seemed like the Black Hills version of the Shroud of Turin. Ever since that time, it has been my dream to figure out a way to permanently display the original nugget, considered by Black Hills antiques expert Jim Adlin as the single most valuable artifact of Black Hills history in existence today. And Jim's wife, Peg, is here with us today. Now on September 22nd, 2012, at Deadwood Mountain Grand, and with the assistance of Rick and Margie Olson, with Dakota Plains Auctions, we will auction off the PCJ2. And the funds raised will give the Adams Museum and Deadwood History the opportunity to construct a highly secure space to exhibit the original Potato Creek Johnny Gold Nugget and to establish an endowment to forever preserve the nugget as well as Deadwood's history. The other half of the proceeds will benefit the Wounded Warrior Project, an organization with a mission to foster the most successful, well-adjusted generation of wounded warriors in this nation's history, with programs uniquely structured to nurture the mind and body and encourage economic empowerment and engagement. Last summer, Sergeant Justin Shellhammer stopped by the cloth shop where he shared his incredible story with Chris Johnson. Shellhammer enlisted in the U.S. Army and trained in the military police. He was deployed to Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom. And on April 5, 2005, when walking in front of a group of soldiers, Shellhammer spotted a mortar round on the ground. Imagine extending your arm in a gesture to warn the soldiers behind you and feeling the impact of another person bumping you, pushing you slightly off balance. Consider regaining your balance and stepping on a very active landmine with your left foot. Like too many unfortunate soldiers, Shellhammer lost his leg as a result. But unlike most amputees, only a month later, Justin Shellhammer ran 2 miles. And the following September, he ran in a 4.5K race to benefit the families of firefighters and policemen killed on September 11, 2001. Shellhammer attributes this determined spirit, along with his sense of humor, to assistance from the Wounded Warrior Project. Please help me welcome Sergeant Justin Shellhammer.
Like she said, my name is Justin Shellhammer. I was injured in 2005 in Afghanistan, and it was my 3rd combat deployment. I was deployed twice to Iraq, and nothing happened to me there. So the 3rd one, I was thinking nothing was going to happen. And like every good thing, things must come to an end. And I stepped on a landmine, which most of you have probably seen. Be walking around, I lost my left leg 6 inches below the knee. After I got injured, I went to Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., and the Wounded Warrior Project goes around to the hospital rooms and gets the wounded soldiers kind of pumped up about getting back on your feet and getting back out into life again. And the Wounded Warrior Project showed me that there was life after being injured, and they helped with the transportation to New York City to do the run and go to baseball games to let other people know that just because you're injured doesn't mean you're going to sit at home and sit in the corner and cry yourself to sleep every night. I'm probably one of the most active folks you can ever meet. I'm a police officer at Fort Meade. I'm one of the only police officers in the state of South Dakota. Well, I am the only police officer in the state of South Dakota that is an amputee. I'm state and federal certified, and that was a big accomplishment for myself because I had to basically jump through a lot of hoops to prove to folks that I'm able to go do this. And the Wounded Warrior Project is what helped me prove to not only myself, but to other folks that if you have a little bit of confidence in me, I can prove you wrong every time. And I run 1 mile in 5.5 minutes. That's a lot better than some people with 2 legs. Run 2 miles in 13 minutes flat. So everybody has accomplishments, I guess. So, but I also I can't say thank you enough to the Wounded Warrior Project to get you out there, kind of, let you know that just because something like this happens doesn't mean you have to give up on your dreams. I've wanted to be a police officer ever since I was a little kid. And this little paper cut I have that my kids call, it wasn't going to stop me from being a police officer. I'm too stubborn and I'm too young. And to have the Wounded Warrior Project behind me the whole way and giving me the courage and the dedication and having the support channels and to be there for me, and if I ever need any help or assistance or anything like that, they're here to help my kids out with college scholarships and help me out if I ever need employment, moving to another state. And they do so many things for you. And to be a part of this, and I had it great when I was injured, when I first got injured, and kind of like pay it forward to make sure there's going to be money and resources for other veterans, because let's face it, there's never going to be a time where there's not somebody injured. So make it better than what I had it. It's great to be a part of that and be here to help make that better for the folks coming behind me. So I'm glad to be able to be part of it.
It's my pleasure now to introduce the co-owner of the finest host establishment here. I rode up with a group of people from Deadwood who pulled it over and said, well, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know this little gem in the Black Hills existed. I think there's lots of gems, and this is one of the great ones, the Black Hills Bronze. It's my pleasure to introduce the co-owner, Kristen, Don, and Standard, who will explain what's going to go on and will direct us further on. When we're done in there, please make sure you come back for the reception.
Hi our facility. We're so happy to have you here. I won't tell you all the details. If anybody would like to have a tour when we're finished, I can take you all through media or otherwise and just show you the process in person. We can do that pretty quickly. But the short story is we took the gold material that the clock shop provided. It was tested at a metals facility that does that. Tested the purity, got the impurities out of it. All of that was done off-site. What we did here was we molded the original nugget, which you see down there in the case, and just like we would do a piece of artwork for bronze replicas. So we made a mold, and then we made wax replica of the actual nugget, made sure it looked exactly like the original, dipped it in a ceramic shell material and silica sand, which is what we do for bronze as well. That provides, after you do enough layers of it, that creates another mold that can take the heat. So we did that, and then we cured that shell. That shell is now, right now, in the kiln, heated up to 1600 degrees. Right now, the gold, the placer gold that the clock shop had, is melted in a tiny little crucible in a little melt furnace down there. So what we're going to do now is we'll set the press up. If you could go first, you guys will get your camera set up in a spot where we're not going to be able to clip on you. And then we'll have the people come in around them. We'll let them set up for a second, and we'll call you, the rest of you in.
We're going to, the mold is in the kiln here. We're going to open the kiln door. That's on a cart system. So I'm going to pull that cart out to about here. Then Mike's going to help me and open the door and make sure the gold is good to go and up to temp. And then I'm going to grab these tongs, grab the crucible, and pour the shell. And that's about it. Once it's cast, we'll let it cool off.
Everybody, this is Mike. He's from the Dakota Rapid Precious Metals, and he's our gold expert. Thank you, Mike, for being here.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
What's that? Was I in the way? On the side there.
It seemed to cast fine. The little vent that Joe put on with the sprue, you know, came up. So when that happens, I know that it all cast. Once this cools down enough, we're gonna move it off the cart and put the cart back in. Close.
How can you tell?
Experience?
Experience.
You can kind of see the orange glow from around the outside go away.
at some point you're going to pull it out of there, eh?
I'm trusting his judgment on that.
They're both pointing at each other. Did you guys all get that? The metal guys usually don't talk much.
Thank you. I think that's pretty good. Maybe over here?
Sure.
Okay, that looks good, you guys. No, not really. Everybody ready? Good.
Hard stuff. Back the other side here.
So you just sandblasted it to make it more uniform, or just to help
Well,
the?
to get the ceramic shell out of
Oh, yeah.
all the
crevices
negatives.
and stuff.
Okay.
Now what do you do now? Bathe it, cut them, and polish it?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with cutting these off, and then I'll have this to look at to
Get it.
make sure if there's any important detail in those areas, and get it back.
Okay, let's go do that.